60,000 of them disappear permanently. Now, this is after deducting people who are kidnapped, people who are murdered and buried secretly, people who want to just disappear and start a new life, people who snatch the children from the other spouse and make a run for it. Even after you take all that out, what you're left is with, according to the FBI, 60,000 permanently disappeared we can't account for in the United States alone annually. Australia, they're saying around 28 to 30,000. Same thing. You take this times every country on the earth, and we're talking tens or even over 100,000 people a year disappearing permanently that we can't account for as kidnappings or whatever. And people say, well, I think some of those might have been kidnappings. I said, no, those have already been accounted for and taken out of that total number. Out of 1 million, we figure only 60,000 per year are actually permanently disappeared somehow that we can't account for in any way under normal circumstances. So where are these people going? Why aren't they coming back? Are they being abducted by UFOs? David Paulides, with his 411 books, seems to think that might be a possibility. So we have to deal with this somehow. We have to do something to protect ourselves because the government doesn't seem to be.
Well, maybe the government can't do anything to protect us. That's the scary thing. I mean, let's face it, you can go to bed tonight and not wake up in the morning because you're gone. It's just that easy. Or you're going to the A&P store to go buy a package of hot dogs and you never make it home. I mean,
or you send your children to the local store for a quart of milk and they never come back. This sort of thing happens all the time. And right away we assume that it's either pedophiles who have snatched the child or the other spouse has kidnapped them or whatever. And in most cases, that's exactly what it is, just something like that, unfortunately. But in other cases, we can't account for it. There was the case of a boy who went out to get water from a well, and it was snowing. And his parents sent him out, and the well was right near the house. He went out, never came back. They went out to look for him. They saw his footprints in the snow. They just stopped dead. There was no one around, no other tracks of any animals that might have snatched him. And this is just one example, and he never came back. He never showed up again, just gone forever. And this isn't just an isolated occurrence. It happens all the time, far more often than people think. And that's scary. Where are they going? What's happening to these people?
That is. I mean, you know, like with Terry Lovelace, when he was abducted and on board that UFO, you know, he was saying he was naked. He had his clothes in his hands. He couldn't move his body, but he could move his eyes. But he heard and saw other people naked holding their clothes. But what really is scared him is the screams, not the type of screams of somebody being scared. The screams of women in pain. This hearing that, and you know the torment,
agony.
Yeah.
Right. And the fact that you're then made not to remember this afterwards doesn't mean that you didn't experience the trauma. And this PTSD that a lot of these people experience is because they did go through tremendous trauma. It takes a lot to cause PTSD, and again, if I torture someone and then administer drugs so they'll forget that I tortured them, it doesn't mean that I didn't commit the crime of torturing them. I mean, what kind of species that's intelligent would do this over and over again to these people? It just doesn't make sense to me. What are they getting out of it? And don't they have any morals? Are they immoral or are they amoral? They're certainly not moral.
No, but you would think about if they came here and they were only trying to get DNA, they wouldn't need the people. And so many of these people are vanishing. Again, I'm just going to say, because, you know, Terry was just recently on the show last week. When he and his friend were released and they got off the UFO, he said there was a lot of people on that UFO when that UFO took off. They weren't released. Where were they going? No,
and that's the point. Where were they going, and will anyone ever see them again? And usually the case seems to be no. And we've had people disappearing for a long period of time. It actually dates back to the ancient Roman Empire and the Greek culture. They talked about generals and people just suddenly disappearing forever and not knowing how or why. And not in the middle of a battle, not in the middle of circumstances where the enemy might have captured them, but out of their homes, out of the cities. And, of course, people think they might have been murdered or something like that, but there's absolutely no evidence to support it. And these people were pretty famous. Searches were mounted and could not find them. Not bodies, not anything. So this has gone on for a long period in history. There was the case of Lieutenant Munkla in the 50s. They see a UFO on radar over the Great Lakes. He's sent up in a jet along with his co-pilot. They see on radar where he intersects with the blip. It becomes one, and then his plane vanishes along with him and the other man forever. No plane wreckage has ever been found. No bodies have been found. Just gone forever. So this is not new. And I don't know what's going on, but whatever's going on, it's not good for us, I can tell you that.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is if they were only here, experimenting, getting DNA, why would they have to keep coming back and abducting people at huge numbers? That's the
question. I mean, how much research do you have to conduct before you've accomplished whatever your task is? It just boggles the mind to think that they're still doing that. There is some plan. There is some agenda on their part. This agenda, whatever it is, involves us somehow, and also animals as well. It involves the deaths of people. It involves the mutilation of animals and mutilations of people. In some cases, really horrible mutilations, and then the bodies are left just discarded like they were garbage. So, again, how do we focus on that? How do we deal with it? And if our government won't help us, then what do we do? One woman told me that maybe they're so advanced they see us as ants, and I said, well, then in that case, the ants have to take care of themselves because the aliens certainly aren't. And then she says, well, there must be good races too, and they have a non-interference policy. And I said, well, that's odd, because if they have a non-interference policy, then why are they allowing the bad aliens to do all this in the way of abductions and murders and damage and injuries, unfettered, completely free? How is that a non-interference policy if you're letting all the other species of aliens do this? So I really question the whole space brother theory, and I used to think of aliens as like Santa Claus. Oh, if we could just get to meet them, get to know them, they could give us technology, zoom us way ahead, give us world peace and solve all our problems. That doesn't seem to be the case. Whatever's going on, they don't seem to give a darn about us, frankly, at all.
And you ever think maybe they're changing our DNA over, again, like me and James talk about it quite often. Just because our time of, a year is a year, or a minute's a minute, to some other, species or humanoids from another solar system, their time wouldn't be the same as our time. So in case where we live anywhere from 60 to 80 some years old as the average, they could live hundreds or thousands of years, for example. So, our time is very short.
Well, there's evidence to support that theory. I don't know that they live longer, but if they're traveling at relativistic speeds, it would extend their lives enormously compared to us due to Einstein's theory of special and general relativity. We know that time changes and slows for people on board ships the closer they get to the speed of light. If these people have faster than light or not, and they're subluminal but very quick, very quick ships close to the speed of light, well, time would slow for them. And we have evidence that might support that. For instance, all the megalithic civilization of the old days used huge stone creations and structures, including the platform at Baalbek in Lebanon, the Temple of the Mount in Jerusalem, the various stone structures. If you're going to be gone a long time, you wouldn't build stuff out of flimsy materials because you might not be back for several centuries. For Earth people, for you on board the ships, it may only be 10, 20 years round trip, but for us on Earth, several centuries might have passed, and buildings would age and collapse because of it. So you would tend to build to last, and these megalithic structures might be proof of just that sort of thing.
Very possible. But the whole point is, why would they have to keep abducting people? I mean, they would have been able to get their DNA. They could have, did whatever, cloned from the DNA. There's got to be some other reason that they're coming down here and continuing. It's like we're a supermarket. They're coming down here and they're getting their carts filled.
Well, that's exactly what I think. And you said supermarket. My word for it would be harvesting. I think they're harvesting.
That's what I think. I just didn't want to use that word tonight.
Yeah, I know it's a horrible, horrible concept. But look, this is a real problem. We know UFOs exist. Even the government admits they exist. The ATIP program didn't decide that UFOs didn't exist. Quite the opposite. They just said they weren't a threat to aerial navigation. Well, that's really cool. How about for abductions of citizens of our country? The government has just known too much about this for too long and denied to the point where it's no longer plausible. They can come up with disinformation, whatever they want to, but so many millions of people have seen UFOs, so many people have claimed abductions, over 1 million in this country alone, that the evidence is in, and as far as I'm concerned, it's no longer a question, do UFOs exist? It is a question of more of why are they here and what are they doing? And people think maybe they're hybridizing us and changing our DNA. Well, how long does it take to do that? But we have programs where we're trying to grow organs on pigs, like researchers grew a human ear on the back of a pig. So, and then what do? You harvest the ear for an organ transplant. So what are they doing with us? Did they hybridize us, change us, so that we match more closely their basic biological structure, and now they're taking what they need from us whenever they want to? They just let us breed wild on the planet and just come by whenever they want to and harvest whatever they need. Apparently they do it with our animals to some degree too. Both bovine and equine, horses and cattle and various species are treated exactly the same way, and their bodies are discarded in exactly the same way. The case of the man in Brazil, his body was found in São Paulo. The evidence showed that he died under great physical trauma and fear. His brain, when they did the autopsy, showed that he died of a tremendous trauma. And they also concluded that the torture he went through was done without the aid of any kind of anesthetic. Now, here they removed his testicles, they cored out his rectum, they removed his eyes, they removed part of his jawbone, they sucked out internal organs through tiny holes under his armpits and near his navel. And apparently he was paralyzed, but he still felt the pain, and that's what he died of. He literally died of terror. And this isn't the only case of this. So what exactly is going on? There's another case in England where a man was found on top of a coal heap, no coal dust on him. It was as if he had been dropped from the air, according to the police. He had a rictus of fear and horror on his face. They found this green ointment on his body, and it looked like something he would use with defibrillation or some type of electrical hookups to him. And apparently he was just, and his clothes were on him right, they were buttoned on him wrong, and it looked as if he was dropped from a height. They discarded the body as if it was a piece of trash. We're not being treated any better than cattle or sheep or horses.
And that is, Rob, the scariest part. And a lot of people are in denial about this. Especially when you look at the cattle mutilation. There was a famous pathologist, the Oregon, in Oregon here back about 2 months ago, the bull and some of the cattle mutilation was going there. He came to the conclusion these bulls and cattle were standing when their eyes were removed. That's the first part, because the liquid between the eyes and the brain would have ran off the side of the, bull or whatever off its face.
Right.
It didn't. It ran off its nostril, which tells you it was
so
standing.
They're doing these animals standing up, which means they probably are alive while they're doing this to them without the aid of any kind of anesthetic. I mean, we're a lot more humane than they are in that respect. Also, blood is a question. What's happening to the blood? It's being siphoned out of them. That man in São Paulo that was found by the edge of the reservoir there, according to the coroner's reports, the blood was siphoned out of him too, and the holes in his body looked as if they'd been cauterized, like through laser surgery. Same exact modus operandi as we find with cattle mutilations and other animal mutilations, and the blood sucked out of them. Apparently no anesthetic is applied. The person or animal is paralyzed, and they are tortured alive. Now, this is not any different from the abductions where people are returned. They are submitted to these experiments. They are not given any kind of anesthetic at all, hence the screams and the agony, and then they're made to forget afterwards. Well, I don't think it's as an act of kindness. It's to allow their experiments or whatever it is to keep on the harvesting to keep on going on without people being aware it's happened to them.
Okay, Rob, we got to take a break. We'll be back in 3 minutes. So, go get a cup of Java, get a nice easy chair, get the fire going, and we're going to be talking to Rob about deadly UFOs. So stay tuned.
Arches over the Puget Sound, Berenice's hand.